to me. That kid that was shot in a Walmart who had a toy gun, that is way scarier to me. You know, they're not even asking questions, talking, trying to find out what's going on. They're just shooting.
Yeah, it's a funny thing about like which news stories prevail and become the mainstream ones. They need to be this sort of perfect and appealing package that people want to share and talk about, and sort of that drives conversation. The really like obviously terrible ones that nobody has, you know, like it's hard to have an opinion about that other than that's terrible.
Yeah.
When it comes to like a kid being shot with a toy gun.
Yeah.
Versus the other situation in
Michael Brown.
Yeah, the Michael Brown situation where for some reason there's these defined sides on that that thing. There's very little gray area for discussion. It's like pick your team.
We were talking about this before the show, but I was watching on Twitter a white rapper and a black guy arguing, and the black guy was on the side of the cop that shot the kid, and you know, wasn't an asshole, wasn't a Republican. He was saying, look, the reality is this guy had robbed a store just before then, had been involved in a bunch of criminal type behaviors, and there's witnesses saying that he charged the cop. Like, you don't know what happened.
Right.
And the white rapper was arguing with him, and he was saying, you are blind to the facts in your desire to be down. And, you know what I'm saying? Which had to hurt the white rapper.
Right.
You know, black guy accuses you of fucking posing.
But that's what's happening in the street right now, isn't it? I mean, it's the same thing. It's that it's appealing for people to latch on to a cause in order to help try to identify themselves.
Yeah.
You know, to get something out of it, to get some kind of
very good way of defining it.
Yeah, to get some kind of I don't know, like this kind of a win can be a success for them, that they can express themselves through these kinds of issues. But obviously, it's not just about a cop shooting a guy, right?
Right.
It's like in this particular case, it appears to me that it's part of a much bigger issue, and specifically that area. And probably the way of life there. Like, is it really? You need to be a certain kind of person to just jump on a riot train, right? Like, oh, wicked, perfect. Let's burn down more shit, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes it'll be. It's not necessarily just race. Sometimes it'll be a certain set of circumstances, like a sports team loses and people go crazy and start smashing cars and whatever, and it somehow attracts other people to that agenda. I remember in Toronto during, I think it was the G20 summit, when it was like the first time ever people had like smashed windows. I was living downtown at the time, and I had my first kid, Will, and he was little. And I remember sitting at home inside and knowing that people were out there smashing windows, going like, how in the God's name are these people justifying it? How did they believe for a moment that smashing a Starbucks is what's going to change anything?
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a weird way to try and get what you want. Is it any? It's not even I don't know. It seems to me like the equivalent of kicking and screaming as an adult.
Oh, it's even worse. It's so idiotic. There was a Twitter post today that I read where this guy was standing in front of a BMW dealership in Oakland, California, which, by the way, is nowhere fucking near Ferguson. And the windows were smashed.
Right.
And it said, fuck corporations.
Right.
Fuck corporations. Let me tell you something, you dumb cunt. You wrote that on a phone that was made by a fucking corporation, you piece of shit.
There you go.
You fucking dunce.
And you broadcast the damn picture via another corporation that allowed you to even have the voice to reach the people that you ended up reaching with it.
What has BMW done besides make awesome cars? What have they done that's so terrible besides making fantastically engineered automobiles that you couldn't possibly come up with yourself?
Yeah, I don't know specifically. But I think it is very strange that people pick and choose which corporations are there for them and which ones are against them. Because ultimately, this entire economic ecosystem is what allows everyone to survive and what allows anyone to have any kind of well-being. It's not perfect. Everybody knows that. But when you burn down the McDonald's in your neighborhood, you're taking away jobs from the people that actually need them. You know what I mean? Like, or the Walmart or whatever it was, that the destruction that's happening over there. It's like by force, you want to throw a tantrum but at the same time, the consequence is bigger than you personally. It's there are, I'm sure, plenty of upstanding citizens who just wanted to go back to work, and this corporation that you're angry with is actually something that people rely on.
Yeah, and in the case of this BMW dealership, I mean, you're talking about such an unrelated institution.
Yes.
So unrelated.
Yes.
Starbucks, there's people that were guarding Starbucks and people were freaking out. Fuck Starbucks. You know, what about the people? What about the people? People pay for that stuff. You know, Starbucks is a franchise.
Yes.
Like someone owns it. They had to earn money, save it, get a bank loan, go out of their way, hire employees, put together a business model. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. This childlike view of the world. And this is not exonerating police. This is not, and I feel for the police because I think their job is almost impossible. To be a cop in a crime-ridden area is almost impossible. There's almost nothing you can do to stem the tide unless you could go back in time and somehow or another, not even the parents of the children who grew up to be criminals, but the parents of the children that grew up to be criminals, and somehow reach them, somehow educate them or provide them with some sort of counseling or some factor that's going to change the way they view the world and view community and view each other, and give them opportunity, give them some sort of a way to not be involved in a life of crime, not be involved in these horrible, cyclical, repeating relationships that seem to occur in these terrible areas.
Right.
I mean, there's so many factors.
Yeah, and in many cases, the areas themselves reinforce the behavior through various means. Like, I used to watch The First 48. Have you ever seen that show?
Yeah.
And you get to see how, like, immediately after a crime takes place, what the cops are working with as far as the evidence, but also the witnesses, and trying to get anybody to say anything about what happened. But on a super core, fundamental level, if you don't want to tell the police that you know who killed somebody, is that really any different than participating, than being a part of it? It's so weird to me that that's considered to be an acceptable thing amongst that community, right?
Yeah, the no snitching thing.
The no snitching thing.
Yeah.
It's like, that to me just sounds like you're afraid.
Yeah.
That to me just sounds like the actual power within that group doesn't lie within the police or authority or whoever, but it lies somewhere else. But you're somehow justifying it to yourself by saying, oh, I really am participating because I chose not to snitch.
Well, if you live in that community, though, and you did snitch, the consequences would be dire. I mean, it's not something that's like an easy thing to stand up for. If you're living in a crime-ridden community,
sure,
and you snitch on
then you
somebody,
also shouldn't expect anything to change.
Boy, it's weird to put the onus on the people that are poor and that are living in these areas. I see what you're saying.
It's not completely that way. Obviously, there are things that could happen surrounding that world that could help it out, but ultimately, to get yourself up out of there, doesn't it have to be? I mean, who can really walk into that community who's not a part of it and change something?
Right.
It's not like you're wanted there. You know, it's not
Right.
like when the police go in there, they're treated in a certain way because maybe the life they lead is so different than that of the individuals in that lifestyle themselves, you know?
Well, also that us versus them mentality gets cemented. Right. It gets cemented in terms of sports teams. So imagine how crazy it gets when you're dealing with crime-ridden neighborhoods and police. It's so hard to break free of.
Yeah.
I worked as a security guard for a very short period of time when I was a kid. And it was a place called Great Woods. It's like a concert place in Massachusetts. And one of the things that I remember really clearly is realizing that we had all developed this us versus them mentality. There was these crazy drunk concert goers who would cause trouble and do all kinds of crazy shit. And then there was us. And we had developed this very clear us versus them mentality that I saw people act on this against people that weren't a problem, you know? And I remember watching it, kind of stepped back from it, but a part of it as well because I'm wearing a security outfit. I'm going, okay, we're doing like cop shit. This is like what cops do.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, like, man, I wonder if that's just like what happens. And you know that Stanford study that they did where they took, they did like a prison study where they put people in jail and they made one group become security guards and one group become prisoners. I believe it was Stanford. Wasn't it Stanford?
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
But they had to